This is Roy Sullivan. He is fishing. His hair is on fire, and a bear has just arrived to steal his trout. Of these three facts, the fishing is the only one Roy had planned, and the burning hair is not even the remarkable part. The fire was started by lightning, which had just struck him on the top of the head, for the 7th time. Yes, I'm aware that sentence requires some elaboration. Roy Sullivan was a park ranger in Shenandoah National Park, Virginia, and between 1942 and 1977, he was struck by lightning on 7 separate documented occasions. He survived all of them, which is either the worst luck in recorded history or the best, depending on which end of the lightning you are standing at. Roy invariably was standing at the receiving end. Guinness lists him to this day as the human being struck by lightning more times than anyone else who has ever lived. They keep 2 of his hats in glass cases, not as a tribute exactly, more as evidence. The National Weather Service puts your lifetime odds of a single strike at roughly 1 in 15,000. This is the story of what happened to the other man. Now, Shenandoah National Park runs along the crest of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is a lovely place to walk and a dreadful place to be tall. Summer storms ride up the valleys on warm Atlantic air. The ridgeline is the first solid thing they meet, and a park ranger's job description in 1936, when Roy joined, was in essence, go up the mountain and stand on it, in all weathers, for 40 years. Roy was a mountain man from Greene County, Virginia. Brawny, rugged, said to look rather like the actor Gene Hackman. He took to the work immediately. The work in time took to him. Strike 1, April 1942. Roy shelters from a storm in a newly built fire lookout tower, which, in what one can only call a bold design decision, had no lightning rod. The tower was struck 7 or 8 times while he was inside it and caught fire. Roy, reasonably concluding that the tower was doing rather more attracting than protecting, ran for it and was struck a few feet from the door, a burn down his right leg and a hole scorched clean through his shoe. At this point, Roy was unlucky in a perfectly ordinary way. Wrong tower, wrong storm. These things happen. 27 years later, it happened again, which is where these things happen starts to wear thin. July 1969, Roy is driving his truck along the mountain road, window down. Lightning strikes the trees beside the road, passes through the open window, knocks him unconscious, and burns off his eyebrows and his eyelashes. The truck, now driverless, rolls on toward the edge of a cliff and stops on its own. Roy woke up singed, but essentially fine, which is a sentence you should get used to. However, Strike 3 arrived barely a year after that, in 1970, and this one found Roy standing in his own front garden, where lightning hit a power transformer and jumped across to his shoulder. Strike 4, in the spring of 1972, found him inside the ranger station. Indoors, at his place of work, presumably feeling as safe as a man can feel. It set his hair on fire. He tried to put his head under the water tap, could not fit, and beat the flames out with a wet towel, which is not a sentence any workplace incident form was designed to hold. And it was around here that something in Roy quietly changed. He said in interviews that he had come to believe some force was trying to destroy him. He began carrying a can of water in his truck, not for the engine, for his head. When storms came, he would pull over and lie flat along the front seat until they had passed. And at home, when the sky darkened, Roy would sit alone in the kitchen, having first moved his wife and children into the living room, a man politely rearranging his own family out of what he had come to regard as his blast radius. He worried about crowds too. Not that a crowd might hurt him, that he might hurt it, that the next bolt might arrive while other people stood within range of the man it was addressed to. The newspapers, meanwhile, had settled on their name for him. The Human Lightning Rod, the Spark Ranger. Roy did not much care for either, on the reasonable grounds that neither of them was a name you give a man you intend to stand next to. Other people, it must be said, did the same arithmetic. Roy told the story of walking with the Chief Ranger one day when lightning struck far away on some other mountain, and the Chief Ranger simply said, "I'll see you later, Roy," and left. There was a restaurant on Loft Mountain that would not let him in if the sky was merely overcast. Roy put it the plain way he put most things. Naturally, people avoid me. He was not angry about it. That is rather the saddest part. It gets worse. Strike 5, August 1973. Roy is out on patrol when he sees a storm cloud that, by his account, follows him. He drives away from it. It pursues. When he finally judged it safe and stepped out of the truck, he was struck, and this time he saw the bolt. Hair on fire, the charge running down one leg and out through the other, knocking a shoe off. He crawled back to the truck and poured the can of water over his own head. The most prepared act of despair in the history of the National Park Service. Strike 6, June 1976. Roy sees a cloud and, this time, does not negotiate. He runs. It struck him anyway, mid-flee, injuring his ankle. And strike 7, the 25th of June 1977, the fishing trip. Struck on the crown of the head, hair alight, burns down his chest and stomach, at which point the bear arrived for the trout, and Roy, while on fire, hit it with a stick. He later confirmed this was the 22nd time he had hit a bear with a stick. I do realize how this sounds. By now, Roy was famous. Guinness certified him the most lightning-struck human being on record. The scorched hats went into their glass cases. He appeared on the American panel show To Tell the Truth, a program whose entire premise is that nobody can quite believe you are who you say you are. Even his wife was struck once, hanging out the washing in the garden. The lightning, one feels, was by that stage simply addressing the household, which brings us inevitably to the question of why. Roy's own theory involved a vengeful force, and frankly, by strike 5, one sees his reasoning. He was, by his own account, not a superstitious man. He simply could not think of anything else that explained it. 7 is a great many coincidences to file under weather. The scientific answer is less dramatic and more damning: exposure. The 1 in 15,000 figure assumes an average person who mostly stays indoors. Roy spent 40 years standing on the weather's front doorstep, at altitude, in storm season, professionally. Lightning strikes the United States some 25 million times a year. It is not aiming, it is simply weather, doing weather in bulk, and Roy stood where the bulk was delivered. The impossible number, the famous one with 25 digits in it, assumes his 7 strikes had nothing to do with one another. They had everything to do with one another. They all knew where he worked. And here the historical record clears its throat. All 7 strikes were logged by the park superintendent, a Mr. R. Taylor Hoskins, who documented every one of them diligently and witnessed none of them. Several had no witnesses at all. Roy himself, it should be said, always claimed the true number was 8. There had been, he said, a boyhood strike out in a wheat field, lightning finding the scythe in his hands. He could never prove it. One does rather note that a man inventing lightning strikes for attention would surely have invented a witness to go with them. The evidence, in the end, is Roy's word, Roy's scars, and Roy's hats. Skeptics have pointed this out. Guinness, having examined the same word, scars and hats, kept the record. I leave that with you. But here is the thing. It hardly mattered whether the true count was 7 or 5 or 4. Once the world decided Roy was the man the lightning wanted, he was that man in every overcast restaurant, on every quiet walk, whatever the number. Roy died in 1983 at 71, not of lightning, of a broken heart, and I am sorry to report that this is not a figure of speech. You know this person, by the way. Every office has one. The colleague whose laptop dies in the demonstration, whose flights are cancelled, whose luck gets discussed in the kitchen once they have left it. We say lightning never strikes twice, as though the universe kept accounts, and then we quietly change seats anyway. Just in case. Bad luck is not contagious, it never has been. But we treat it as though it were, and it is the treatment, not the luck, that leaves the mark. People avoided Roy Sullivan for the rest of his life. The lightning, in fairness, never did.